Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I have Brian Kosar, the CEO of Aesthetic Laser Rental, here with me today. I'm so excited to get to learn more about you, Brian, but also about your business, Aesthetic Laser Rental as well, too. So before I dive into a little bit of the background and ask a few more questions, would you mind doing a formal introduction for yourself?
Sure thing, Alex. Thank you. My name is Brian Kosar. I started a business called Aesthetic Laser Rentals back in, I'm going to say 2021, if memory serves me correctly. We've been in business for almost 5 years now. Prior to that, I actually had another rental business in diagnostic ultrasound, which really gave me the impetus once I sold that to a private equity firm to basically start this business. I looked at the aesthetic industry and loved what I saw. I had a prior small investment in this industry that kind of piqued my interest. And so back in 2021, along with my daughter and I, we started Aesthetic Laser Rentals. We started out focusing mostly on aesthetic equipment, like hair removal lasers, tattoo removal lasers, resurfacing lasers, RF microneedling, things you would find in a med spa. And since then, we have sort of moved into wellness type devices, in particular, hyperbaric oxygen chambers and red light therapy beds. We see a lot of great growth in both those industries. And at the same time, the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen a serious convergence between those two industries as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm super excited to touch base on the wellness side as well, too. But I do know that your business did start with the aesthetic side of things. And it's very clear when you go to the website as well, too, that you have a ton of incredible aesthetic equipment actually up for rent. So I'm just curious, who are your typical customers? Like, who are you working with today?
Yeah, we really target, at least on the aesthetic side, three different groups: plastic surgeons, dermatologists, and med spa owners on the aesthetic side. And on the wellness side, wellness centers. We also rent for home use as well. And we have a lot of med spas and doctors that are looking for wellness devices for their aesthetic practices because of that convergence that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, right now my company actually works with a ton of different med spas and surgery centers as well, too, which is what made me want to reach out in the first place. I think your ability to rent the technology, and we'll get into all the pricing and all that good stuff in just a moment here, but your ability to allow other types of companies like med spas, like you just mentioned, to get their hands on your technology at an efficient and discounted rate, just makes so much sense. Can you walk me through what that rental model actually looks like?
Yeah, sure thing. So we have a unique model. In my previous business, we were refurbishing diagnostic ultrasound and re-renting it. We had a lot of people on staff to do those kind of things. It was a great business, and I do miss parts of that, especially the people I used to deal with. On the aesthetic side, though, one of the things that I was able to do, and I think everybody probably has heard this before, when you have a business and you start to see that something's working, especially if you had that business for years prior, like I did with that last one, you kind of get into that new business. And along the way, you're like, I wish I would have done this differently and that differently. But it becomes difficult, especially, when you're in a position to sell the business like I was back in 2019. I said to myself, man, if I had a couple more years, I would, really change the way we were doing things here. And so when I started Aesthetic Laser Rentals in 2021, I was able to do that. So we do deal a little bit in refurbished equipment, but, probably well over 90% of what we do is bought brand new from the manufacturers. I think people like that better. Everybody wants new equipment, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
The challenge is how much money can people afford? Obviously, the cost of refurbished equipment is less than new equipment. However, I do think people appreciate, having the new equipment. It's like Christmas Day, opening that thing up when you get it. And we have a very strong partnership with all the manufacturers that we work with, both on the aesthetic side as well as the wellness side, where they do a lot of the work with, for us and with us up front. The experience that our customers get, whether it's, getting a refurbished unit, but most especially a new unit, at least on the front end, is exactly the same experience if they bought it directly from the manufacturer. Our manufacturer partners We'll go out, deliver the equipment, install the equipment, which takes, several hours depending on the device. And then they'll train our renters team for a full day, which is exactly the same way as if they bought it directly from the manufacturer. All those same things happen. The only difference for the customer when they rent from us is that they work all those details through us rather than directly with the manufacturer. Our customers love that. They know what they're getting. They know the support that they're getting. They know the training that they're getting. And so we rent this equipment. We give people a chance to try it before they buy it for 1 year, which I think is an appropriate amount of time, to try equipment. And at the end of that year, they can make one of three decisions. They can either return it and be done with it, in which case we clean it up, repackage it, and rent it to somebody else. Two, they can keep renting for another year. Or three, they can purchase it, which, if they purchase it, we're giving them 50% credit for all the rental payments they made during the course of that 1 year term. So if they're paying $3,000 a month, they're getting $1,500 back every time they make a rental payment times 12 months. It's $18,000. We just take $18,000 off that purchase price if they want to buy it at that point. Typically in that scenario, after renting for a year and then adding in that discount, they can rent they can get a loan from a bank or wherever, or maybe a specialty lender in this space, and probably get it at about 70% of what we were charging on a rental basis for a brand new unit. So, when we say try it before you buy it, that's exactly what we're doing here, with our rental customers. They, for the most part, I always say, if you're making money, buy it. And you like it. If you're not sure, you keep renting. And if you're not making money, you don't see a pathway to start making money, then return it. And I think our customers really appreciate the opportunity to do those things.
I love that you're giving credit back to the spas and the other clinics that are actually renting from you as well too. I feel like that's a no-brainer. Obviously, you get to sell them the equipment. They've already been using it. They already feel comfortable with it. Plus, they're putting in that investment. So kudos to you. I think that's brilliant on the business side of things. Now, talk to me about the actual devices themselves, specifically on the aesthetic side. You had mentioned around a $3,000 price point. Is that the typical price people are spending with you on a month-to-month basis, or is that for a particular type of device that you're renting right now?
Well, it really depends on the device. I would say, just about everything we do is somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 per month, depending on the device. Tattoo removal laser is going to be in the high 2000s, a little bit below 3,000. A brand new tattoo removal laser will be higher. But then you've got RF microneedling equipment that could be towards the lower end of that $2,000 to $3,000 spectrum. So it just really depends on the hyperbaric oxygen chamber side and red light therapy beds. You're talking typically somewhere around $2,000 a month. Most of the ones that we're renting are slightly higher than that. But that's like I said, that $2,000 to $3,000 is a good yardstick for what we rent equipment for at Aesthetic Laser Rentals.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's not a bad price, seeing as some of this technology can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think that totally makes sense. Now, can you talk to me, who is renting actually good for, and maybe who should skip the renting and go straight to the purchasing?
It's a question we get a lot, and I always like to say, look, if you're a doctor and you've been in the, say you're a dermatologist and you had other equipment, and you're replacing one with an updated one, a newer one with better technology, and you're making a lot of money with the previous device that you were using. I think, in those kind of situations, you're probably off better buying it because this is going to be a lot cheaper. By definition, renting is always going to be a little bit more expensive than what you could purchase it for. On the other hand, if you are new to the business, a startup, which we deal with in med spas, but maybe a doctor at any kind of practice that wants to get into aesthetics, they want to see if they can make it work first. I think we're a perfect, solution for them where, like I said, try it before you buy it. If you're getting, great demand and great results, you end up buying it in the long run. So, our typical customer, we probably lean more towards med spas than, doctors, although that seems to be changing here recently for whatever reason. I don't know. But again, if you're sure that you can do very well at this and you've test marketed it or you had other equipment, probably should buy it. However, if you're not sure, that's what we do.
That's brilliant. And I feel like that could make a lot of sense for a lot of different people in a lot of different businesses, especially if they're bringing on some type of new technology or new modality into the practice. Now, speaking of which, I'm just curious, is there a term length that people are following? Is this always a 1 year rental or does that contract look a little different?
Yeah, 99% of the time it's 1 year. We don't do less than 1 year. One of the
Okay.
main reasons we don't want is, that this equipment doesn't travel extremely well, especially, lasers. They are very technical, devices that, are energy based. And, when you don't ship them properly, sometimes the computer boards inside need reseated. Maybe something gets knocked around, when you're moving it and might need fixed, which, our technicians do from the manufacturer when they install it, especially if it's a reinstall for an existing one that was already rented. But for the most part, the manufacturer does a lot of that for us. It works great. Customers have confidence that they're getting a piece of equipment that is going to work if it's not brand new, because we send them out. They go out there, they check it out. They change the filters, they replace any parts that are needed. They give it the blessing that it's a good piece of working equipment. That's not to say that something may not happen to it during, over time. But anyways, it doesn't travel well. And to really answer your question, I don't want to ship it. We don't want to ship equipment, every month here and there and everywhere, because you're just asking for problems. When you're doing it once every year or two, that's great. Every once in a while, though, I think there was a second part of that question. Is, we do have 2 year rentals where we take 10% off the yearly price if people want to commit to that. We've had a few that have taken us up on that, but for the most part, it's usually 1 year.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And speaking about shipping, obviously logistics is a huge portion of this business. Obviously getting around that expensive equipment, making sure that it's being delivered and it's still properly functioning. Can you just walk me through a little bit about your competition? Are they able to do what you're able to do? And how are you separating yourselves apart? I know that there's something there with the shipping, right? You're able to get those devices pretty much anywhere in US, correct?
Yes. Well, we got to find very competent shippers, and it took some time, but we have some really great shippers that protect the equipment really well, and we have a lot of confidence in them, and things are showing up much better than when they did when we first started. But that's like any business, you learn as you go. Our competition, we don't really have any on a national level like we do. I think we're the only national rental business. We rent everywhere in the United States right now. What we see as competition, and to me, yes, competition, but I'm friends with a lot of the founders and CEOs of these other companies. They tend to do day or maybe weekly rentals. Their model is more along the line of they contract with the doctor for 2 days a month. They'll come in on the second Friday and the last Friday of the month. The rental company in these situations will come in, drop it off first thing in the morning, leave a technician there if needed, to help during the day, and then pick it up in the evening. It's a cool business model. It is, if you rent it for 30 days that way, you'd be paying a heck of a lot more money than you're paying us a monthly rental. But I think it's a great model. I just see a lot of, logistics that were going to be needed to do that. Got to have vans and people and moving things here and there. Got to have more technicians in house because, like I said earlier, these things don't always, travel, really well. So you got to spend a lot more time probably fixing them before you ship them back out. And we get a lot of situations where people ask us, "Hey, I just want to rent, for a month or a week or a day," and that kind of stuff. And we say, "I'm sorry, we don't do this." And then I refer them to these other companies because I think they do a really good job, for doing what they do. Is it competition? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it's not what we do. I don't see us doing that anytime in the near term. So we're happy to help out our friends when we can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a healthy amount of competition is always good. It's actually expanding the industry itself. But you do have quite a large inventory. Are they able to keep up with the same amount of inventory and overall lasers and devices that you have?
I like to think that we deal with the best and the brightest. And the ones most demand in the aesthetic and wellness spaces. Some of these other companies, depending on the ones you're talking about, yeah, they have some good equipment as well. I'm not sure they're getting it new, like we are. We're still a relatively young company. So, we've only been in business, 5 years roughly. We don't have any equipment older than 4 or 5 years at this point. Generally, we usually sell them when they get to that point. because we want to recirculate the money. We want to have, like always have newer equipment. And, everybody wants newer equipment rather than older equipment. So, the answer to that question, they might have some, but definitely not the, entire spread that we have.
Sure. And can you share with me what maybe some of the top rentals are that people are currently placing with you today? Maybe like the top two or three?
Sure. By far, the most popular one we rent is the Candela GentleMax Pro Plus. I believe it's the most used hair removal laser in I think North America. We'll say United States for now. And a lot of what we do is hair removal lasers. That's number one. Number two is the Luminous Stellar M22, which is a multi-platform system that does a lot of different things. We do very well with that one. I'm a big fan of it. And then on the tattoo removal side, we deal with, Candela again. Candela really has great market share and great equipment in the hair removal and tattoo removal spaces. Their tattoo removal laser is called the Pico Way. Fantastic, always in demand, and fantastic product. It's expensive. The tattoo removal lasers are about 50% more expensive than hair removal lasers on average. So, sometimes, we get to that point, where people want the Pico Way, but maybe the price is just a little too high for them. We then work with another one called the Luminous Pico 4. That's a really good one too, that we rent quite a bit. So, those are the two biggest areas. We do a lot in RF microneedling. We do a lot in the, obviously the hyperbaric oxygen chamber space. So amongst all those I mentioned, those are like our go-tos.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk about that for a moment as well too. Earlier in our conversation, you actually brought up the convergence of aesthetic with wellness, which gets me extremely excited. My company is actually based in Miami, Florida, so I'm seeing this firsthand. I'm seeing how aesthetics and wellness are really converging, like you had mentioned. I'm seeing a lot of mixed modalities come into a lot of the practices that we're working with, also ones that are just down the road for me. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? I'm assuming you probably saw a trend at some point in time and thought, hey, this is probably a smart idea to start getting involved with wellness, right?
Yeah. Well, there is definitely a convergence, in aesthetics in particular, it really took off during COVID. And one of the reasons I've heard, and I think it does make a lot of sense, is just people weren't in person anymore. They were on Zoom calls, like we are now, and you could see what you look like. And a lot of times, people were looking at their, themselves on their Zoom call, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got a mark here, a mark here. And there was really a boom in demand for aesthetic procedures because of that. So everybody wanted to look good. And how this convergence, at least how I see it, coming together was, probably about a year and a half ago. Everybody was talking about, hey, I look great on the outside, but they wanted to feel good on the inside. And that's where these two areas are starting to converge. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, often thought of, for divers with the bends, maybe in a hospital setting to help heal, infections after surgery and things like that. But hyperbaric oxygen therapy, in addition to, helping, with your health on the inside, is actually really good for the skin. Oxygen under pressure, creates more plasma, which carries more oxygen to the organs. One of your organs is your skin. And so combining like a resurfacing treatment, a laser resurfacing treatment, say somebody gets their face done, they take off a couple layers of skin, takes off all the rough marks, the age spots, things like that. The new skin comes in, but it can be downtime for anywhere, from 14 to 15 days after you have a fully ablative, full on, skin resurfacing. Adding hyperbaric oxygen chamber to that equation, can, at least I've seen studies that have said that it could cut it down by almost 40% from, 14 to 15 days to maybe 8 or 9. It is one of the most, laser resurfacing is one of the highest margin treatments that a med spa or doctor can do. The problem that they have a lot of times is people don't want to take off 2 weeks of their life where they are not going to go outside or see anybody or do Zoom calls because that's what it takes. So people aren't like, crazy to get that treatment done. But a week, 8, 9 days, that's a lot better. And so it opens up, more procedures, more treatments for the doctors and med spas. And on the other side, it does help your skin recover, more quickly, at least from what I read, as well as at the same time, having a lot of benefits, internally as well.
Well said. And hyperbaric chambers just keep getting more and more popular. Obviously, so many incredible individuals and even like celebrities are boasting about them right now and even privately owning them. I actually work with one of the largest manufacturers of hyperbaric chambers right now outside of Europe. I can't mention the name, but what I do want to say is when I was browsing on your website, I did notice that you don't have any crappy Chinese soft shell chambers, which people don't actually speak about enough. Hyperbaric chambers obviously give you so many incredible benefits, like you had mentioned, especially too with the skin, which is your largest organ. However, with that being said, there's actually a lot of safety risks with using ones that are poorly manufactured. And it looks like this, and I want to dive into this a little bit more, but you have a connection here in the USA. Is that correct?
Yeah. We work with a company called OxyCell out of Miami too. I did a lot of due diligence because I had, fears and reservations about some of the horror stories that could happen, although it didn't really happen that often, but could. And so I wanted to make sure that if we were going to go this route and start working with, runners who wanted hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we had somebody we could trust. So this OxyCell, fantastic company. Their designs of these hyperbaric oxygen chambers are just sleek and beautiful. My thought, before I started doing this in wellness of hyperbaric oxygen therapy chambers was kind of like the old school propane tank looking, chambers with, a couple windows on it. They still have those around, but, they now have these really nice seated ones that, are a lot more comfortable. You're sitting in there, you can look around, depending on the chamber, sometimes you could, take a book in there or take whatever you want to entertain yourself. You're typically talking 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes longer, to get the full benefit of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So yeah, they look really cool, really sleek, and they work extremely well. And like I said, I went around and I talked to a lot of people. I invested a lot of time because I wanted to be sure. And I'm, pretty darn happy that we are partnering with OxyCell now. They've been tremendous.
Yeah, and it's great that you have multiple different versions as well too, because some people do want to sit, some people do want to lie down. So it's nice to have that flexibility and obviously have the windows in there so you're not feeling like overly claustrophobic. Like if you're watching this and you've been in a hyperbaric chamber, I'm sure at some point in time you've been in one that's claustrophobic. It's not the best feeling. So I'm happy with the chambers that you have up as well too. Now, a question for you though, on the wellness side of things, what's more popular right now in terms of rentals? Are you seeing that the hyperbaric chambers are getting more inquiries and rentals, or is it the red light bed? And are you anticipating adding on any more wellness devices inside the wellness category as well too?
Yeah, we're doing a little bit more hyperbaric versus red light therapy. I'm not 100% sure one's better than the other, and they do have some similar type qualities as far as the benefits. Just from my own perspective, I kind of get the oxygen in your system under pressure creates more plasma, and oxygen is the building blocks of all life and how that could help you. Whereas with, red light therapy, at least from a knowledge standpoint, you basically have different spectrums of red light that penetrate the body that have all the, the similar benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. But for me, it's just, there's a ton of studies that it works, and it works really well. My simple mind understands the oxygen, therapy better.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And the second part of that question actually is, are you anticipating adding any new technology or modalities to the wellness category on your website?
Yeah, we're looking, at a bunch of different things right now. It's a function of demand. A lot of times when people come in, they ask about, whatever they ask about. And I take that as an opportunity to ask them, hey, any other, things you're looking at that seem interesting right now? And so, yeah, we've looked at, some other things. We're just not ready yet to launch them. We're having a ton of success in the hyperbaric and red light space. If you think about what we do, we go out and buy the equipment up front and then we rent it out for 12 months. It's a very capital driven business. I'm happy to say that we, received a pretty sizable private equity investment the middle of last year. So we're growing like crazy, but it's not an unlimited, pot of money that I can dig into forever. I got to be responsible, steward of this money, and we're sticking with the things that are doing well right now. But I'm sure at some point we're going to, expand into different devices.
Sure. So congratulations on the capital, by the way. That's incredible. And I trust that you will be a good steward of the money itself. But let's go a little bit deeper for aesthetic laser rentals. What are you envisioning when you say you're growing like crazy? Does that mean that there's new customers coming on board, that you're growing the actual technology that you have inside, growing locations, growing reach? Yeah.
It was, when we first started the business, we had a decent amount of money, but I'll say we did more of a soft launch, or a medium launch. We've expanded quickly over the last couple of years, and until we got this private equity money last year, and it's kind of been a double every 12 months sort of forecast, kind of going forward. But one of the issues that when we first started, we didn't do a ton of marketing. We did some. We didn't go to where we went to the different conferences for aesthetics and wellness too, but we didn't present, or we didn't get a booth or anything like that, because honestly, I was afraid if we had too many people come in too quickly, we couldn't accommodate everybody. So up until we got this private equity money last year, we were not screaming from the rooftops what we do. We were, mildly yelling, from the second floor, and that's changed with the new capitals come in. We're going to conferences. We're presenting at these conferences. We're getting booths now. We're going to be at the American Med Spa Association conference called AmSpa next month, and got a couple others on tap as well. So having that capital has made a lot of difference, and it also gave us some time, like any new business, to figure out where our sweet spot was. It's pretty much stayed consistent since we started this business. I'm not going to lie and say that I knew wellness was going to be a part of it when we started aesthetic laser rentals. Yeah, that's changed a little bit, but we learned some lessons, some good ones, some bad ones where we made some mistakes that we're not going to make again. So it was actually better to start out that way. If we would have had all that money up front, we probably would have made a couple more mistakes, but we didn't. We learned from some of the smaller ones, and now we're thriving because we've got a good read of the market. We know what works. We know what pricing works out there. We know what devices people really want, and it's kind of all culminated in us being able to hopefully double this year over last year, and we got some pretty aggressive growth projections over the next couple of years as well.
That's great, and it's fantastic that you're able to work with your daughter as well too, and kind of keep it family based is really something special. You mentioned that you are going to be going to some more conventions. You mentioned one of them. Is there any other ones that we should keep an eye out for you at?
We're going to present and also have a booth at Aesthetic Next I believe that's in Austin or Dallas. I think it's Austin in September. And then we're looking at some wellness conferences that we want to, also be at and have a booth as well. Haven't really narrowed that down yet, but we will over the next month or two.
Yeah, that sounds great. Marketing is obviously so important. Is there any marketing advice that you would give to a med spa or maybe a new wellness practice that's maybe new to the scene? Maybe they're only 1 year old, 2 years old.
Yeah, it's funny. You learn what works and what doesn't work on the other side as well when you're in this kind of business. What doesn't work typically is, marketing is so important for a med spa and a doctor, but more a med spa. Because a lot of times people do it themselves. They might hire a sister, brother, cousin, friend to do it as well. And it's a pretty steep learning curve. Google Ads is really important in this space, with geo-targeting, Instagram, same way. And if you're not, good, if you don't have good experience with what terms work and how to geo-target customers, then you're going to spend a lot of money figuring it out. Okay. And so I, always recommend that they hire marketing companies in either one of these spaces, because what the Google what the Google AdWords that work are, how to geo-target, you're doing it for other customers. And as a new customer of a company like that, you get the benefit of, all that from the get-go, and which means you're going to get more customers, you're going to get more replies, you're going to make more money. So I always encourage people to hire out with a major, firm that focuses on aesthetics and wellness.
I honestly couldn't agree more. Marketing is my domain. Obviously, I'm learning today more about the rental side of things, but marketing is my domain, and we do audits for prospects and clients every single day, all day long in this particular space. And it kind of blows my mind sometimes when we're having these conversations and people have been trying to run their med spa for 9 months and they didn't have a plan. They don't really know who they're targeting and they don't know what their customer acquisition cost is. And they haven't really given it a well thought out plan. And then when we go on the back end, we see the Google ads, they're driving them to a homepage, not a landing page. And they don't have cohesive messaging and they don't have an offer to hook them in. And like, there's so many things to it. So I honestly couldn't agree more.
The geo-targeting too is so important. You know, I'm on the internet a lot, just given what we do. And when I see an ad from, you know, I'm in Orlando, Florida, and I see an ad for hair removal laser services in Los Angeles, California, I think to myself, oh God, no.
They're burning money.
You're burning money. You don't want me. You want somebody in, you know, within, you know, 10, 20 miles of your office. And obviously they don't understand geo-targeting. You know, at that point, and you know, I see that, I'm like, oh no. So that's always, I use that as a cue. If I see one of our customers, which generally I don't, but every once in a while we do, and say, hey, I'm seeing this and I shouldn't be seeing it. You need some real help. Let me recommend, you know, somebody to you. And you know, they usually talk and have a conversation and usually end up, you know, going with that marketing company because it's just so much more efficient.
Yeah. Especially if they're renting out the equipment, right? If they have a 12-month contract or an agreement with you to rent out some particular laser and they're not booking in consultations every single day and booking in those services, then they really are leaving money on the table, especially if they're going to not have the geo-targeting dialed in. Then at that point in time, they're just burning money. So I think it totally makes sense. At Raging Agency, we have a full funnel marketing system based for wellness brands. I'm happy to go through it as well too, but realistically, it just encompasses everything. We do a full rip and repair for a lot of these brands because when we start talking with them, what we find out very, very quickly is that it was all piecemeal together, just like you had mentioned. So maybe they worked with their cousin on the copy. Then maybe the founder wrote, you know, the intro offer, but then they hired a third-party graphic designer. And then maybe they worked with some guy who was referred to them locally to set up their ads. And when you piece it all together, it was never really built with a strong foundation for the brand in itself. So we do a rip and repair. We rip all of that out. We only keep what's good and we'll rebuild that all. So the offer, the messaging, the landing page, all of the creative assets, the ad campaign, and all the reporting and the communications all brought in centrally to one team, which has been super, super incredible and honestly life-saving for a lot of these businesses that we've been able to work with.
It's beautiful. I mean, it means all those things that, you know, people, you know, call us. We do startups. You know, we're one of the few companies that does startups. We're you know, personal credit score driven on that kind of thing. But I can tell pretty quickly, you know, because it's a question that I like to ask. If you're opening a new place, you know, what's your plan for marketing? And when they say, oh, we're just going to do this or that, I do cringe a little bit. I'm not on Zoom, so they can't see the cringe, but maybe they hear it in my voice. And I tell them, you may want to really look hard at, you know, hiring somebody to do it. That's a steep learning curve. You're going to spend a lot of money, and you're not going to get customers as quickly as you could unless you work with somebody that knows what they're doing already.
Yeah. So startups aside, if anybody wants to learn more about the products that you actually have available on your website, I love that you already have the pricing shown there. But should they have a question of some sorts, do you prefer them to reach out to you via email or phone call or social media?
All are perfect. You know, we have customers coming in, you know, all three of those ways. You know, through the website's great. That's probably the most common. We like that. You know, phone calls. You know, I'm always on the phone. You know, our work hours. You know, what are they? 9 to 5. At least that's what it says on Google. I'm answering calls at 10:15 at night and 8 in the morning a lot of times. So, you know, it's right on my cell phone. It's easy. So that's another good way. And then, you know, I feel like,
is it okay?
I feel like too on like social media and Instagram in particular, since this is a very Instagram driven marketplace, that, you know, I think a lot of people start there. You know, when they hear about us, they end up going to our website because obviously we have links and things like that to draw them there. And then they either submit a request for information or just call us from there. And that's, you know, any which way people want to come in is fine.
So even if somebody, maybe a med spa owner or a med spa investor, is looking to have a couple questions with you, maybe they're trying to decide if renting or purchasing is better for them and which laser they should get started with, are they welcome to inquire and have a conversation with you about that?
Of course. You know, our website is pretty simple, as www.aesthetiklaserrentals.com. Phone number's on there. Instagram has the same thing. We're also Aesthetic Laser Rentals on Instagram as well. So, go to one of those two. You'll find our number. If you want to call us, great. If you just want to submit a request on it through either one of those places, we're very quick about getting back to people.
Thank you so much, Brian. You seriously shed so much light on the rental industry. And I think what you're doing is honestly tremendous, especially that you're giving some credit back to the people who are renting from you. So if you're watching this and you want to learn a little bit more or get in touch with Brian, you can go to aestheticlaserrentals.com or call 877-376-9041 to get in touch with them as well too. They actually show all the pricing online too, which is tremendous. But if you do have any questions, maybe you're looking at one model of a laser to another one, and you want a little bit more information, Brian would be happy to go over that with you as well too. So yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Is there anything else that you want to shed a little bit of light on in the industry?
I appreciate you saying that. We do have all our pricing, brand new equipment pricing on our website. However, if you remember back to the beginning of our conversation, our renters after a year can return the equipment. So we do have returned equipment, generally anywhere from 10 to 20% lower than what you see on the website for that type of thing.
Well, that's awesome. So yeah, if you're interested in any of the equipment, go over to aestheticlaserrentals.com, take a peek at that. And if you're interested or have any questions, you can just book in a call there, submit your inquiry, and Brian will be happy to reach out to you. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. This was a tremendous conversation. I can't wait to share it with family and friends here.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.